close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Star Sport podcast. I'm Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. On today's show we'll be joined by the Skibbereen Rugby Club's under-18 manager Walter Young following their win in the Munster Cup final last weekend.
We'll also chat to Donovan Rossa's under-21 football manager Shane Crowley ahead of their Carbery under-21A football championship final against Doheny's this Sunday in Castlehaven.
But first, there's only one place to start today, and that's with Bandon's Conor Hourihane, who was the hero last night as he scored Ireland's only goal in their Euro 2020 qualifier against Georgia at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. Kieran, what did you make of the game first and foremost?
I never thought I'd get such delight to see an Ireland team make 5-yard passes of the ball and actually take some bit of delight from it. We've struggled over the last couple of years. I think that's no secret. It was just good to see an Ireland team keep the ball in the deck and pass it a small bit, I thought, Jack. The game against Gibraltar last weekend, the 1-0 win away there, that was hard to watch. I'll admit that. That was a nervy performance. You can blame the pitch or the wind, but that wasn't good enough. And if that was Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane's era, we'd be all over it, kind of slamming them. But last night was definitely a step in the right direction. Ireland played some good football, I thought. Yeah,
there was an unusual sense of pride amongst the fans in the stadium, or what seemed like a sense of pride, almost to the extent that even though they were only winning 1-0 and with 5 minutes to go Georgia hit the post, I almost had a sense that if it had finished 1-1, which it almost did, I felt that the Ireland fans may have accepted it based on how good the performance was overall. Not that they would have been happy with a draw, but there was that sense, like in recent years, 1-0 wins against teams like Georgia, which has happened on more than one occasion, has been met by boos and whistles from the crowd because of the actual performance rather than the result. But last night, even though they won, so that's great, they got 3 points, that's the most important thing, but it felt like the performance was what got the crowd up the most, which is great to see, because it's not often you come away from a 90 minutes Ireland game buoyed by what you saw on the pitch rather than just the result.
No, 100% agree, Jack. I think going into the game too, the whole John Doheny FAI, there was a cloud hanging over it, and even we saw the tennis balls protest. But it was just good to see us talking about football as well, and Ireland playing some decent football for spells. Obviously it wasn't perfect. Ireland can do a lot better, I think. But it was definitely a step in the right direction, and for us here in West Cork to see Conor Hourihane play such an integral part the last couple of games. He was man of the match against Gibraltar. He was probably the only bright spot from that performance. I think Mick McCarthy said as much after. And then last night for Conor to score his first international goal that turned out to be the winning goal. And what a free kick. Absolutely superb.
Yeah, it was a cracking free kick. And you mentioned the tennis ball protest there. For those who didn't see it, Ireland got a free kick just outside the Georgia penalty area in the 33rd minute. I think it must have been reference to Ireland being the 33rd team at the 2010 World Cup. The fans decided to stage a protest in which they threw tennis balls on the field, a protest at the outgoing chief executive, incoming executive vice president John Doheny. But there was a 3-minute spell where Conor Hourihane was standing mulling over what he was going to do with his free kick. And oftentimes when you see that in games, players can maybe overthink it and they end up skying the ball over the bar, or they try something smart, a little cheeky free kick. But Conor Hourihane, Bandon's Conor Hourihane, kept ahead, curled it around the wall with the help of Richard Keogh, who was pushing against the Georgia wall, but he bent it around the wall. Richard Keogh or Shane Duffy, not 100% sure, but regardless, bent it around the wall into the corner. Keeper had no chance, and it was just a fantastic moment for Ireland and for West Cork,
and especially for Conor, because he'd 6 or 7 appearances under Martin O'Neill, but I never felt that he was trusted enough to be given a proper opportunity. He never got a sustained run of games. He was played in these kind of the meaningless friendlies, you call them, like away to Mexico and New York and all these sort of games. But like, Conor has been at Aston Villa now for 2 years, and recently he played his 100 games, so he's racked up 100 games for Aston Villa in 2 years, which is some record, you know. And in that time, just a couple of stats, Jack, because we love our stats here. He's got 19 goals and provided 14 assists. They're impressive figures, you know. He started 87 of those 100 games. last year he became the first Villa midfielder in over 20 years, I think, to kind of reach double figures. So there is something about him. He's very highly rated. And Mick McCarthy, talking about Conor after last night, said that he's tried to sign him before, but he could just never get him. So Conor has his strengths. He's very effective. He's a sweet left foot. Like, it's a magic wand, really. Kind of, he's, when it comes to free kicks, set pieces, deliveries, you saw even the last couple of games, he's very, very dangerous. So he really has a role to play for this Irish team. And hopefully this is just the start of something. Like, he's 28. Is he the new Wes Hourihane? You know, he's kind of a late comer in some regards. But he has something that he can add to this Irish team. And I'm just glad to see that he's taken the set pieces, because Robbie Brady's had his difficulties, but there's been games there in the past where Conor doesn't get to show how good he is. So taking the corners last night, he caused plenty of problems. Against Gibraltar, his deliveries were spot on. So there's definitely something about our Bandon boy.
Yeah, and not to over-egg his performance too much, but when I was watching last night, I have it written down here in my notes. I don't want to, just because I'm about to compare him to another Cork man, but I was getting Roy Keane vibes watching Conor Hourihane last night. Now, I don't want to, as I said, over-egg it, but there was a moment when he went up for a header with a Georgia attacker in the middle of midfield. The Georgia attacker went down claiming he'd been elbowed in the back of the head. The replay clearly showed that was a light knock to the lower back almost. The Georgian player went down holding his head, and Conor Hourihane stood over his vaunted foe and roared him to get up, and you could see he was almost foaming out the mouth. And like, his teammates came around and said, "It's alright, Conor, calm down." But you know, he was really up for the game. And another time he showed great leadership quality, because you mentioned his leadership qualities. Another moment following that, in the 73rd minute, he picked up the ball out on the left wing. James McLean came short for it, looking for it into his feet. But you could see Hourihane pointed down the wing and roared at McLean to run. McLean took the note on board, ran down the wing. Conor passed it to him. McLean put a nice ball in. It came to nothing in the end. But it just showed the confidence he had in himself to be able to tell a player of McLean's stature, you know, an absolute stalwart, tell him exactly what he wanted him to do, rather than just, because on a couple of occasions I thought someone like Enda Stevens was a bit nervous when he got the ball, and he was rushing things at times. He played well, but Hourihane was just confident in himself and backed himself every time he got the ball, and it was great to see.
But he has plenty of leadership qualities, Jack. When he went to Plymouth years ago, only as a young fella, he dropped down to kind of the bottom division there, was at the League 2 in England. They made him captain, and he was in his early 20s. When Barnsley took him, they made him captain. So all the managers have seen something in him to kind of, again, those leadership qualities and stuff. So it's just great to see Conor finally get his chance and take his chance and start to show Ireland fans what he can do, because we hadn't seen it up to the last two games.
And you could see it as well in the way he was dropping back from midfield on occasion, taking the ball from the centre halves and turning, facing forward and looking for the forward pass every time. Centre midfielders who've played in that position for Ireland in the past have been almost afraid to take the ball from the centre halves for fear of maybe the management on the sideline telling them not to bother with play like that and just get it forward. But you could see Hourihane really stepping up to the plate. And I think another noticeable thing about last night's performance, Conor Hourihane, was the way in which George Hamilton started pronouncing his name correctly. Because on Saturday he was calling him, in the game against Gibraltar, he was calling him Conor Hourihane, and West Cork Twitter, or all the people I follow from West Cork on Twitter, were up in arms about the pronunciation George was doing. But last night he had obviously read somebody's tweets and he was referring to him as Conor Hourihane, which just stoked the rest of Ireland Twitter, who were claiming that George was once again pronouncing his name wrong. But I think it's safe to say Hourihane is the pronunciation that we want down in West Cork.
I think that's it, bang on. I think give Dennis Hurley a quick name check here. He's been banging the Hourihane drum for the last couple of years to get people to pronounce the name properly. But it wasn't just George Hamilton on Saturday. I was listening to Radio 1 for a spell as well, and I think it was Kenny Cunningham was on there, and they were getting it all wrong as well. It was Hourihane and all these different pronunciations, how they were wrapping their tongue around the Hourihane. I don't know, but it even shows now that like, I'm not saying Conor's made it because people can pronounce his name right, but again, it shows that he's, you know, it's a small step in the right direction that people are finally pronouncing Conor Hourihane's name right, you know. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come, and there's bigger and better things for Conor for Ireland in the campaign ahead, because it's still going to be tough, Jack. I know Ireland sit top of the group now, 2 wins from 2, but Denmark and Switzerland are 2 very good teams. So it was so important that we got 6 points with those first 2 games. Even better for us in West Cork that Conor Hourihane had such an important part to play in those 2 wins, but the bigger test lie ahead.
Yeah, and the next round of fixtures, we're going to have Gibraltar at home, but in the first game of the next round is Denmark. So a rematch from that 5-1 drubbing at the Aviva, maybe was it a year ago, probably 18 months ago, something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on when they have to travel up to Denmark to face them. But it has to be said, it's positivity going into that game, whereas in the past we would have gone into a big game like this on the back of a disappointing result or a disappointing performance. But it feels good to be an Ireland fan right now. I said to you before we went home last night that I had a bad feeling and that I was expecting one of the worst campaigns in our history, based on the disappointment around the performance on Saturday against Georgia, and also just a bad feeling around the setup with the John Doheny messing going on. But I was happily proved wrong, and I feel 10 feet tall coming into work today after watching that last night.
Mick McCarthy's converted you, so you're a believer in Big Mick again, are you?
Well, I was a believer in Big Mick the first time round, but this time round I felt that it was almost like going back to an old girlfriend, Joe, bringing Mick back in. It seems good at the time, like you have some good positive memories, but ultimately it's a bad move and it all ends with tears basically. So that was my worry. So I was open to Stephen Kenny coming in straight away. But Mick McCarthy's here now. The honeymoon period is still ongoing. The ex-girlfriend still hasn't become the ex-girlfriend for the second time. So, yeah.
It seems like you're talking about past experiences there, but I think we'll move on quickly from that before dragging up the past, Jack.
Yeah, okay. Well, we leave the soccer there for now. So congratulations to Conor Hourihane and congratulations to Mick McCarthy, Robbie Keane, Terry Connor, Ireland, and all the panel. But we leave it there. And coming up in part 2, we're going to be joined by Walter Young, the coach of the Skibbereen under-18 rugby team, as they prepare for an All-Ireland semi-final.
Thank you for listening to the Star Sports Podcast. Don't forget to pick up this week's Southern Star, featuring our award-winning sports section that has everything a sports fan in West Cork could want. Available every Thursday in shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world. The Southern Star, #1 for sport in West Cork.
Now, as we've mentioned in recent weeks on the podcast, West Cork Rugby is in a really good place at the minute. A view that was reinforced last weekend with wins for both Skibbereen and Bandon at underage level, Kieran.
Yeah, Jack, another fantastic weekend for West Cork Rugby. So there was Munster Cup finals run at Irish Independent Park on Sunday, and Skibbereen beat Cove Pirates by 8 points to 3 in the Munster 18 Cup final, while Bandon were victorious at under 16 level when they beat Innis in the Munster under 16 Cup final. So fantastic, two West Cork teams and 2 cups coming back home.
And this weekend at the Old Crescent Rugby Club, just outside Limerick City even, Skibbereen will play Ballinasloe in their All-Ireland semi-final at 2 o'clock, while Bandon play in the second game of a double-header at 4. And Kieran, you caught up with one of Skibbereen's 5 coaches, Walter Young, to preview the game.
I'm joined now by Walter Young, one of the coaches on the Skibbereen under-18 rugby team that won the Bank of Ireland Munster under-18 Cup final on Sunday, beating Cove Pirates 8-3 at Irish Independent Park. Congratulations, Walter. Can you talk me some about through the game? It seemed like it was a very tight game against Cove.
Yes, well, I mean, the game against Cove on Sunday, we knew it was always going to be a very, very tight game. We have played this particular group of players maybe 4 or 5 times over the last couple of seasons, and it has always only been one score in either direction, and in one occasion we drew on a semi-final actually of the under-16 Pan Munster Cup, but we would have won the game then on a statistic, which is a ruling. If a game ends in a draw, there's no extra time in underage rugby, and it comes down to most tries, first try, first score. And on the same day, we had actually 2 tries apiece, only we scored first, so we went forward to the final. But yes, coming back to last Sunday's game, it was always going to be a very, very tight game. as well as that, we were playing on the 4G pitch, which makes a difference. And even though both squads would have had a run out there on a training session the previous Saturday, you don't ever know who's going to react best or worst to the pitch. But I suppose, to be honest about it, in the first half, we seem to be playing a little bit, we seem to be slightly heavy-footed, Our line speed wasn't great, Cove, in all fairness, were putting a lot of pressure on us, and they were playing with a lot of intensity. And I suppose, to be honest about it, we were probably glad to win at half-time at 0-0, to be honest about it. We had a shot at goal. Jordy O'Brien took a penalty kick and unfortunately put it slightly to the right of the post. And that was really the only kind of opportunities we had in the first half as such. But then we went in at half-time. We had made a couple of small changes during the half to personnel. We went in at half-time and we came out in the second half and we had a bit more spring in our step and a bit more life. And we upped the tempo a bit and upped the intensity. And thankfully, we got ourselves to the finish line with an 8-3 result, if you understand me, Kieran.
It's absolutely fantastic, Walter. Like, Jordy O'Brien got the try in the second half, and I think it was...
That is correct. Jordy O'Brien, well, actually, I suppose the first score came from Jamie Shannon, maybe 15, 16 minutes into the second half. It was to the right of the post, back maybe around the 15-yard line or so like that. Sorry, 15-yard sideline, and struck a sweet strike slightly into the wind. And then actually Cove very, very quickly afterwards got an opportunity and levelled the game at 3-3. So, well, if it had finished out then as a final score of 3 apiece, we would have won the game on the first score ruling. But thankfully, after that, we always felt that our backs probably had the upper hand, only just to get that once opportunity. We were kind of moving the ball wide quicker, and our passes were sharper. Only just, in tight games, you don't get too many chances, but thankfully a chance came and play moved to the right of the pitch off a set piece, and Jamie Shannon at number 10 switched it back, and Jordy found a hole at the far left side and got in and scored, and that put us 8-3 ahead. Unfortunately, Jamie Shannon missed the conversion, which was a difficult kick, and I suppose, look, the game ran out at that point, and we managed to. Cove had another attack on us and got into our 22, but we managed to run down the clock and secure the win, if you understand it.
Great stuff, Walter. And there was big celebrations after, and obviously coming back into Skibbereen on Sunday night was fantastic.
Great celebrations, because this would be the first time that the Skibbereen RSC would have won the Pan Munster Club Cup at this level. We call it actually the under 18 and a half age grade. As I said, this year there was another half year put onto that age grade, and we set out at the beginning of the season with the target of try and win this trophy in this competition, and 15 matches later and unbeaten in this particular competition, the trophy is back in Skibbereen, and we now have a crack at the All-Ireland semi-final. Actually, we're playing the Connacht winners, which I believe is Bannon and Slough, County Galway, and we're playing in Old Crescent's ground in Limerick on Saturday. Saturday the 30th, this coming Saturday at 2:00.
Last season, Walter, I was saying that Bandon won the Munster Under 18 Cup.
Yes,
and they
that is correct. A number of this year's players would actually have played Bandon in the final last year in Thomond Park. It was, as I say, it was under 18 outright as regards the age grade last year. They lost that game actually on a 2-point margin, with Jamie Shannon missing a conversion. I think it came off the crossbar in one of the last kicks of the game. So had that kick actually got over, Skibbereen would have won the game on the most try, first score ruling. And as we all know, Bandon went on to progress to win the All-Ireland final, which was a great achievement for West Cork Rugby and obviously for Bandon itself, if you understand me. Hopefully we can do the same now this weekend coming, and with the final then in 2 weeks later.
Obviously, the last couple of years, rugby's been on the rise in West Cork, Walter, and Skibbereen as a club has produced Gavin Coombs and Liam Coombs.
I mean, if you take again this squad of players back 2 years ago at under 16 level, they won the Pan Munster Club Cup, and they also won what we call the two county titles, as in the South Munster League and the South Munster Cup. And then you have, of course, obviously Bandon success. But I think a lot of that, and of course, obviously our interprovincial players. You have Liam Coombs, Gavin Coombs, you have the Richley brothers in coming from Bantry Rugby Club. You have Darren Sweetnam, of course, from the Manway. And obviously you have John Hodnett making inroads in the Irish under-20s at the present, if you understand me. So, yes, rugby does seem to be, on the rise in West Cork. But I think, these individual players progressing to the levels that they are is encouraging to young players, if you understand me, and they can see that you don't necessarily need to be going to the traditional rugby schools to achieve and compete at a high level, if you understand me. So it's an encouragement to the younger players, if you know what I mean. And in fairness as well, I feel that the way that the rugby structures are set up in the clubs, right up through the mini levels, which is at under 6 up to maybe under 12 or so, and then obviously the underage grades. It's a nice structure. At mini level, when there's a game on the day, all players must play, if you understand me, so that's giving everybody an equal opportunity. Then when you start hitting into the competitive age grades, like if you take now the Pan Munster Club Cup, that is actually, there's 3 tiers in that. You got what we call the Cup, which obviously Skibbereen won, then you got the Plate and you got the Bowl. So after the initial qualifying sessions, or conferences as we call them, teams then get kind of into groups depending on their ability. So if you're a strong panel, you end up playing at the top level, and if you're a slightly weaker panel, you play at the middle level, and then if your panel is on the weaker side, you play at the low level. So you end up then, as the season progresses, playing opposition teams that are equal to your level, so nobody's getting, as they say, pasted in a game and this kind of thing. So there's something for everybody, if you understand me.
Oh, fantastic. Walter, thank you so much for joining us, and the very best of luck in the All-Ireland semi-final against Ballinasloe this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Star Sports Podcast. Don't forget to pick up this week's Southern Star, featuring our award-winning sports section that has everything a sports fan in West Cork could want. Available every Thursday in shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world. The Southern Star, #1 for sport in West Cork.
Welcome back to the Star Sport Podcast, and we're going to turn our attentions to GAA action now, starting with hurling and the Senior County Championship. And Carbery GAA had a good win, Kieran, last night against Avonju.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, it's great to see the Carbery hurlers get off the mark with a good win, and it's Charlie Vaughan, the manager, and that gang. They put in a load of work the last couple of months preparing for this championship. We carried a headline in last week's Star in an interview with Charlie where he said the Carbery hurlers are not going to just participate, we want to win. It sounded like a rallying cry, but it definitely paid off last night. Super win. I think it was John Sheehan and Dara Coakley with the 2 goals. It sets up now the next match against county champions Immakilly, which will be a huge test. But it's great to see just positive noise about the Carbery hurlers. Like I said, they put a lot of work into this team. It seems like the division is finally put in together for the Carbery hurling team. The intermediate clubs are supplying players, and even going down the ranks, you St James's, Plunkett's, Mahoonis, Kilmeen, they're all given players. You've Kilbrittain and Barry Rowe are just players from those clubs on the Carbery hurling team as well. So it's just positive for the division, and especially coming off the back of the Carbery footballers losing the week before, it's just great to have some good news. It really is. So well done to Charlie Vaughan and all his team there, and the very best luck for the next test, because that is a huge test. But they've nothing to lose in a game like that. They've it all to gain. So
well, between the Cork senior footballers being relegated to Division 3, Carbery losing their first round of the championship, as did Beara, is West Cork now hurling country?
Well, I think we're more rugby country than hurling country, but we'll take what we can get. No, it's just great for Carbery hurling. Like I said, a load of work has gone into it, and it's the 25th anniversary of Carbery winning the county title this year as well. So even the board deserve credit for this. Like, they've really backed the hurlers this year in terms of preparation. Like, the team have got together a lot more. They're getting meals after training. They're getting fed. So it's just a concerted effort to help Carbery hurling, and it kind of bore fruit last night with a huge win. So fantastic. Yeah,
well, congratulations to them, and as you mentioned, they play Immacully in the next round. Now, moving our attentions to Gaelic football action, and O'Donovan Rossa claimed a famous win last Saturday, beating rivals Castlehaven by 112 to 1-8 to book their place in the Carbery Under-21A football final versus Doheny's.
That's fantastic. So what we have now this Sunday in Castlehaven at 3:15 is the Carbery Under-21A football final between O'Donovan Rossa and Doheny's. So it's a great story for O'Donovan Rossa, the local Skibbereen team, to be back in an Under-21A final. They competed at Under-21B level last year. They won that. They went all the way to a county semi-final. So for the team to come up to the A grade and beat Clonakilty in the first round, and then beat Castlehaven in the semi-final, and are now in an Under-21A final, it's just a great story. They will find it tough against Doheny's. Doheny's have quite a good team. Doheny's are very impressive when they beat Carbery Rangers in their semi-final last weekend. That was 20 points to 113. And Doheny's can call on Mark Buckley. He got 11 points that day. And Mark is a former Cork minor and Cork under-20. And he's Doheny's leading light at senior level as well. So Skib will find it tough to keep him under wraps. There's also Fionn Hurley, who's another very, very good player that Doheny's can call on. But Skib has some very, very good players of their own, and Dylan Hourihane there has been in top form for them. He's got 116 in their 2 games, so what's that, an average of almost 10 points a game. He got 8 points against Clon, 1-8 against Castlehaven the last day. So it could turn out into hopefully a good football game, and we might have a shootout between Dylan Hourihane and Mark Buckley, which really worth the entrance fee alone on Sunday.
Well, you spoke to their manager earlier on today, so let's hear from him now.
Thanks for joining us, Shane. Congrats on a great run so far. O'Donovan Rossa have obviously qualified for the Carbery Under-21A football final this Sunday. But before we look ahead to the game against Doheny's, I want to ask you, what was the target this season for Skib? Because you were coming back up to the A grade as Under-21B champions. So what was the goal this season, Shane?
Well, the goal of the season was really clear, and that's just to progress these lads. I mean, they've shown great potential over the last number of years. Like, a lot of them have been playing Keller Shields, everybody trains together with the seniors, and we do see a lot of potential in them. And I think this year, like, there was no way tough on winning West Cork, something like that, but I just think to get a run, to get a few games under their belt, because we saw last year when we were down in B level that, just by playing lots of games and going on winning the West Cork, and then the extended period there, getting to the county semi-final, like, even though it was awful to be 3 months, 4 months waiting for quarterfinals and semi-finals, it still meant that lads were playing football all summer with the seniors, and they developed massively. And like, we brought that into this year. There were 2 or 3 overage. Brought that in. We went to the Glenville tournament, which was great for us. Mm-hmm. So we got a great run in that. Got to the final. They all beat us in the final, but like, that was 4 competitive games for us as well, going into the clan match initially, and just brought lads off. And I think it's, at this age group, it's important to keep guys developing and keep them in the game, because it is an age group that you can lose guys to the game, and just kind of keep them progressing. And I think we're moving along nicely at that stage with that.
When you're looking back at last season, I'm always interested in this, because you kind of took 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. Like, because we hear a lot in Cork, teams are very kind of, our clubs, they're very slow to kind of relinquish their, let's say, their senior status or go from A down to B. But it's worked out very well for you. Kind of, what was the decision behind regrading to Under-21B last year, Shane? And how come it has worked out so well? What has been the big benefit of that?
Yeah, well, I thought the decision initially was because we're at an age group in Skib now where we are playing B level in a lot of grades, and we had no teams up to Premier level, and we just felt that this bunch of lads, like last year's bunch, like they were playing at lower levels, and we just didn't want them to play A just for the sake of being, look, why, let's play A because we're senior. Like we could have been beaten the first round in early March, and that's it. That's them. They're done. So, and we have a bunch of lads in that might not be playing football for the summer. Like, and we said, look, at least at B level we'll be competitive, and so we take from there. And so we went down B, and so we were lucky to get over Kilbreth in the first day out. But after that, then it was just we kicked on and we developed, and so we just saw the potential started to come out in guys, and we allowed them to express themselves, play a good brand of football, and so they developed from that. And we also went down last year with the aim to go up to A in 2019 anyway, because we just felt the 2019 team were pretty decent. But I think to get in preparation for that, they needed to run a games in 2018 behind them, and the only way we were going to get that level was we had a level that we were actually going to be competitive at. Like, we're not just winning it, but actually that we'd be going up against teams that weren't going to swamp us and beat us well.
You kind of kept that winning momentum going in the first round this year. You beat a good Clonakilty team 112 to 1-7. Was that important that you found your feet very early on in this competition?
Oh, it was. Like, we put a lot of emphasis in the first round as well, because like I believe that the county-wide thing is still going on, and so the semi-finals in West Cork might get into the county section. I said if we can get over Clan, at least we're guaranteed 2 more games of this grade, and we just said that getting Clan is very important in that regard. And then if you're in a semi-final, at least you've got a county to contend, and plus the West Cork, So like against Clan, like we're under no illusions. Like Clan have been playing above grades enough, so over the last few years they've been quite successful in 3-1. And we thought we were good enough, and we just didn't need things to go well for us in the day. And look, I thought each of them, and they all played well, and I think we're just in good form. And things are going well now. Injuries are beginning to creep up enough, but I still think that the squad is developing away. And look, that's the main thing. Like, we have to deal with injuries as they come along.
You kind of took that good form into the semi-final against Castlehaven the weekend just gone, and that was a game again where you kind of, whenever there was questions asked of you, you definitely answered them. You had a good run of points there at the end of the first half. Dylan Hourihane got the important penalty with 10 minutes to go. So what was the most pleasing aspect of the performance for you, Shane?
I think it was the fact that we went down 3 or 4 points there early on in the first half, and we missed a few goal chances. And like against Castlehaven, like, you just don't want to. You need to take your chances, and I just felt that the lads showed great character, just not to panic. They stuck with it, stuck to the task, and we finished the first half very, very well. And then even then, when Castlehaven got their goal to bring the game down, we kicked on again, and I just thought it showed great lads, great trust in each other and great character just to come back from that, and let alone their footballing skills. But this was a great test of where their heads are at, and so that shone through for me, and it wasn't the main headline likes like Dylan Hourihane and Sean Fitzgerald. Like, you expect big games from like them and Roy Byrne, but it was the lesser guys that the Alan Knott, the Ross Fitzgerald, these guys, Padraig O'Neill, these guys were outstanding, and then Luke Connolly came on early for Kevin Hurley. After Kevin Hurley, like Luke was only just a young kid, came on, and I just thought he was simply outstanding, and with his brother inside the full forward line, So it all was well for the future, and the main pleasing aspect was just the way they kept their heads and they kicked on.
You mentioned Dylan Hourihane there. I think he got 8 points against Clan. He got 1-8 against Castlehaven. He's obviously one of the kind of go-to men in your attack.
He is. Like Dylan is our scorer and chief up front, and he's showing super. He's our captain this year, showing great leadership. I think he's as fit as he's ever been, and I just think his honesty of effort, everything with Dylan is. If he can keep that upward curve, like, there's nowhere that kid can't go, And like, he's been part of the senior panel for the last four years as well, and so we just kind of asked him to take on a bit of a leadership role this year, and he's just taken that on with no pressure to it at all. And if Dylan can keep that going, he can drag the team further and upwards.
What sort of challenge so you expecting from Doheny? They did a very good win against Carbery Rangers in the second semi-final on Sunday. I think Mark Buckley kicked 11 points in that game, and obviously Doheny's only won the under 21A 2 seasons ago. So you expecting a fairly titanic battle against them, Shane?
We do, of course, and like they've had a couple of Premier minor teams there over the last couple of years as well, and they won the minor county back in 2017 as well. So they'll have a nucleus of a very, very strong squad there. like I suppose that you might have been talking about Carbery at the start of the year that they were the team to watch, but we just felt there with Doheny, especially their forward line there, Phil Hurley and Mark Buckley, like, I mean, they have fantastic forwards, so it's up to us to try and get a game plan or at least get our matchups right, So other than that, like it's a superb grade of football. I mean, like they're the age group, the lads that they're allowed to express themselves, and I just think that it's a game to really look forward to. We have a few injuries, and we've the rugby game is on Saturday as well. So we'll be hoping some lads come through that injury free, and like that's going to be a big test. Looking forward to it, and I'm sure, I don't know if anybody's going to be calling anybody favourites, but I think both teams have a cracking.
What needs to happen on Sunday, Shane, for Skib to win this one?
What needs to happen is basically all our players need to play up to the level that we expected them, and that they don't get too nervous. It's going to be big enough occasion, and but I think they've played enough big games over the last couple of years to get that nervous out of them. Look, they're showing great character so far. I think what needs to happen, like anything, is just work rate. We've been harping on about work rate. That's no matter how the skill levels go in the day or your footballing and all these things go for you, there's no excuse not to work hard, and that's what we expect from lads from the start to the fighting whistle. And if you can just work hard and be your best, that's all you can ask of lads.
And you mentioned the Skib Rugby game. Obviously, Skib won the Munster Under-18 Cup the weekend just gone as well, and the likes of Jamie Shanahan, and he was missing the last day. Would you expect the likes of him hopefully back on Sunday, or what's the update there?
Yeah, look, we'll be hoping Jamie will be available for selection. Yeah, I mean they have the game and the game, like, fair play to them for winning last Sunday, and they have the big game now next Saturday. Like, so we wish them all the best luck, and hopefully that they will come through injury free. We lost Darren Daly. He broke his collarbone with the rugby lads, so he's a big loss for us. He's out for 2 to 3 months now, and look, he's got Oisin Lucy and Adam O'Regan as well there, so. Which should add to our squad, which we didn't have the last day. So we'll be just keeping our fingers crossed that they come through injury free on Saturday. Just because, look, you need all your players available. Even just not even from the starting 15, but from replacements. Like it's not just a 15 man game anymore. We just need fingers crossed. We wish them the best luck in the rugby, and let's hope that they're available on Sunday for us.
Thank you for listening to the Star Sports Podcast. Don't forget to pick up this week's Southern Star, featuring our award-winning sports section that has everything a sports fan in West Cork could want. Available every Thursday in shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world. The Southern Star, #1 for sport in West Cork.
Welcome back to the Star Sport Podcast, and Kieran, before we finish up, it's that time of the week again. What's in this week's paper?
Jack, it's a cracker. No, this is another really action-packed Star Sports section on sale this Thursday. Of course, we're going to lead with our local Irish international soccer star Conor Hourihane after his goal-scoring heroics. But there's a lot more than that. We didn't touch in this podcast that the Cork footballers have been relegated to Division 3 of the Football League. Results elsewhere conspired against them on Sunday, even though they won away to Armagh. So we have a couple of pages on that, and I had a chat with Rory Dean from Bantry, just in his thoughts on what's next for this Cork football team, how relegation will impact him going into the championship, and what he thinks and how he thinks Cork can turn this around. So that's a pretty interesting read. We also have a big preview of that Southwest Under-21 football final between Doheny's and O'Donovan Rossa. We have also chat to Noel Feely this week as well. Noel obviously had his last ever race as a jockey on Saturday at Newbury, and he went out on a high note. He went out with a win. So we had a chat with Noel just to see what's next, how he's going to settle into life after. I suppose he's been busy for 20 years, Jack, as a jockey, so it's a huge kind of change for him. We also have an interview with Josh Wycherley, a Bantry man who's been such a key part of the Ireland Under-20 rugby team that won the Six Nations. And there's a lot more besides that as well. There's an interview with Chris O'Leary from Valley Rovers, who won a West Cork Sports Star Award recently. So there really is something for everyone in this week's sports section. So I would urge anyone who has an ounce of sense in their head and €2.20 in their pocket to get to their local shop and pick up a copy, because you will not be disappointed.
And as Kieran said, €2.20 in your local shop. an absolute bargain. But if you want an even bigger bargain, you can read the digital edition of the Southern Star news and sports section for less than €2 a week. All you have to do is visit www.southernStar.ie/e-paper. You can even read archived editions. So if you happen to miss last week's paper, which I can tell you was pretty damn good, or papers from 6 months ago, they're all in the archive and you can access them all for less than €2 a week. All you have to do is visit www.southernstar.ie/e-paper. But obviously I would encourage everyone to get out and buy the print edition, because as we said last week, you just can't beat that feeling of holding broadsheet newspaper in your hand, and it'll last you for the week reading through, because there's so much good stuff in there. Isn't that right, Kieran?
Yeah, 100% right. As always, we encourage questions, and anyone who has a question or a topic that they want us to discuss, always feel free to email us at sport@southernstar.ie. That's sport@southernstar.ie. And I got in a question this week, Jack, that I need to throw at you. Obviously, a good few people watched this podcast on the video when we put it up later in the week. And Niall from Skibbereen has sent me in a question, and he says, what is the secret to Jack's hair? Because Jack, to be honest, it's the finest head of hair I've seen in West Cork in many a year, kind of. So for anyone who hasn't seen Jack's hair, I would urge you to watch the video of the podcast later in the week when it goes up on our social media channels. So Jack, what is the secret to this head of hair that you have? Because it is absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's very kind of you to say, Kieran. But you know, as the old saying goes, grow the curls for the girls. So that is the secret to my hair. I've got big, luscious curls, and they're all for the girls. Aussie shampoo and a bit of conditioner. That's all it takes. Anyone can have hair like this with the right care.
That's the secret, lads. Just get a bit of conditioner and you'll have hair as good as Jack's. But thanks very much for listening to us again, and for joining us again here on the Star Sport podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. So make sure to rate, review and subscribe on iTunes, Android, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher or anywhere else where you can like and listen to this show. So thanks very much. We'll be back again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Star Sports podcast. Don't forget to pick up this week's Southern Star, featuring our award-winning sports section that has everything a sports fan in West Cork could want. Available every Thursday in shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world. The Southern Star, #1 for sport in West Cork.